Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar introducing the all-new Fast Track Talon XE. Just a few quick items before we get going today. During the webinar, all attendees will be muted for best audio quality. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in your questions. They will be monitored. This webinar will be recorded and shared with all of you in a few days. And it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, Connor Duhame and Stanko Paliksic. Oh, sorry, I'm butchering this. Palexic. There we go. Stanko is the Director of Product Engineering at Charge Solar and Fast Track and has been in the renewable energy industry for about 2.5 years. Connor is an energy systems specialist at Fast Track, and he holds a bachelor degree in energy systems engineering and has been working in the solar industry for over a decade. Most of his career has been working on project management, product design, and support for solar racking systems. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Connor to get us started. Thanks, Connor.
Great. Thank you, Tatum. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're really excited to launch our new product, the Talon XE, our newest slope roof mount. So Talon XE. So this replaces our current Talon slope roof attachment. So it's our better and badder roof attachment featuring a 6-screw design, rapid installation and exceptional load capacity. It comes with a pre-installed butyl, ensuring a watertight seal. And as always, we incorporate a flashing over top that gives you that redundant watertight seal and directs water away from any attachments. So this really makes it one of the safest, most watertight solutions on the market. And as always, we're covered by a 25-year warranty on this product, and it supports our Fast Track Ultra line. And competitively priced, fully engineered, and tested in Canada, designed for Canada. So to highlight a couple of the features and advantages of the new Talon XE, number one, reduced screw quantity. This is really the big one. So we have now gone down to a 6-screw design. So this reduces the penetrations and increases the installation speed for your decking attachment. So these 6 screws, they can go anywhere on the roof. They're going to just screw right into the wood decking, whether it's plywood or OSB on your roof, and gives you lots of versatility in your attachment. Number two is a watertight seal. So pre-installed butyl seals the base plate and screws against the roofing. So looking at the image here, the base plate is that square steel plate you see at the bottom. And then the flashing, of course, is the nice black piece that goes over top. So that base plate is going to come with a piece of sticky butyl already applied to the bottom. And that gives us a really great watertight seal against the shingles. And then the flashing is going to slide over top of this and tuck underneath the shingles. And this diverts water away and ensures that all those screws are covered and water is never getting to them to create a leak in your roof. And then finally, we have an O-ring. So it's a little rubber ring. You can kind of see it on the bolt stud there on the base. And again, this just seals that one hole in the flashing and keeps all water away from your connections. Improved installation. So we've made several subtle improvements to the product to make the installation better, faster, and easier. We have a smaller footprint for the base plate. So this allows more positioning flexibility on the roof, and we have a pre-installed stud that eliminates the need for pre-assembly with this product. An enhanced flashing. So shorter design improves fitment. So the length of the flashing itself is a little bit shorter. It's less likely to run into nails, cause issues during installation. And rounded edges enable a smoother installation. It's less likely to get caught or tear on the shingles as you're sliding it up underneath. We have a truss mounting option as well. So kind of the baseline is a decking install, but we do have the option for a 2-screw truss mounted installation. And this allows secure installations to roofs that may not have adequate decking. So you can use screws that go right into the wood trusses or substructure of your roof. And then, of course, the rafterless attachment is the standard, and these will go right into the OSB or plywood. Okay, so less is more. So these are a comparison of our new Talon XE on the left and our current or old Talon on the right. So you can really see the differences right away. We're much smaller and there's some differences in design, in particular screw count. So really the screws is a critical part of this. So we've reduced from 10 to 6 screws and while maintaining load capacity. And that's really the key. So we've reduced screws, we have the same pull-out capacity. And we've been able to achieve that by improved design, improved spacing of the screws, rigidity of the plate. So while we're reducing screws and speeding up the install, we are not sacrificing the strength of this product.
Small correction, we've actually improved capacity by about 15%.
This is true. It is actually a little bit better. Yep. So we use a number 10 by 1.5 inch screws. These are the standard pan head square drive screw. They're great. They're commonly available. They're easy to install. Everybody's got this drill bit in their tool bag, so it's really fast and easy to use. And the great thing about number 10 screws is they have a very small diameter. They're not going to cause damage to the decking, to the truss when you install, no cracking, that kind of thing. So they're really an ideal screw for this kind of application. A single butyl pad. So you can see on the old Talon there are in fact 3 pieces of butyl on this product. So one is right on the top in the center, as you can see, and then there's one on either side underneath each row of screws. The new Talon XE has just got a single piece of butyl on the bottom. And really this makes the install much friendlier. So that butyl, when it comes to you, is going to have a piece of protective paper over top so that they don't get all stuck together in the packaging. So when you go to install this, you peel off the paper, stick it down on the roof. And just having a single piece and not having to muck about with all little bits of paper on the roof flying about and just the assembly of peeling them off is really a nice improvement. Additionally, we've got a pre-installed stud. So that bolt is an M8 fastener right in the center, and this is what allows us to attach our L-foot and then our racking system down. On the current Talon, it's a carriage bolt that you have to install yourself. You have to insert it up, kind of poke it through that piece of butyl. It's a bit of a process. Now this comes pre-installed. So this is a stud that's already in there, no mucking about with butyl. It's really quick and easy. And lastly, as you can see, it's a smaller base plate. So just the footprint is smaller. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on why that's important. It gives us a bunch of layout flexibility. So when we install the Talon base plate on the shingles, we want it to sit within a course of shingles. So in my image there, you see the red X. We don't want it to overlap 2 shingles because you're going to get a bump. The butyl's not going to seal as nicely. So we really want to always keep it within 1 row of shingles. Now, the reason why being smaller is important is it gives us flexibility to move it up, down, left, and right within that course of shingles, whereas the current or the old Talon more or less filled up the full course of shingles. So you had a little bit of wiggle room up and down, but not a whole lot. So now we have quite a bit more room, so you can slide it up and down. You can get your flashing to fit just where it needs to be, because we want that flashing to tuck up underneath the first course and just underneath the second course. And I've got some images later that'll explain that a little bit nicer, but getting that positioning right is really important and it keeps the water away. So having this flexibility makes the installation a whole lot easier. Another benefit is for some of these architectural shingles. What we see here in this image is kind of a standard shingle, but sometimes they've got unique designs. They might have a really narrow footprint that you want to fit that flashing into. So having this base plate smaller and the flashing smaller allows you to fit it on a much wider range of shingle types.
Question if you're ready for it.
Yeah, you bet.
So a question for Michael is the one-piece butyl on the bottom of the new product over the 2 holes used for rafter installation already? They often use engineering screws, and now the current Talon doesn't have butyl on the 2 screws that are used for rafters, and they're having to apply tape or butyl to those pieces before they use it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. So that basically there's a continuous piece of butyl. It's just a square, the exact same shape as the base plate that's stuck right on the bottom. So yes, the butyl will cover all of the holes. So whether it's a rafter or rafterless installation, you're covered. And yeah, that really was a bit of a disadvantage on the old one too. Those two center holes that you see, the larger ones, is what you would have used before for truss installations, and they didn't have butyl underneath. So yeah, you're going to be covered with that going forward. Okay, rail spans. So really we want to have high load capacity in our attachment, and we also want to enable long rail spans, right? The longer we can do the spans, the less attachments we have to do, the less attachments, the less penetrations in your roof, and of course, the faster your install. 4-foot spans is kind of typical for most locations in Canada. It doesn't cover everything. There are locations where you could probably go more. There's some where you might have to go less. And that's where our span tables come into play. So these are available on our website, fastrack.ca, in the download section. And you can see just a snippet on the right of what a typical chart might look like. So you'll go through and you find your region and you apply, your snow and wind loads, and you can find out what kind of spans you can get away with. So by maintaining this high capacity within the Talon, we're really able to unlock the max span of the rail. So the two are kind of comparable as far as capacity, what the rail can handle and what the Talon can handle. And this is really important. It means that we're not wasting rail, putting a bunch of attachments when the rail's overbuilt. So you're going to be able to get the most out of your spans. A good example of this, so we've got a bit of a case study at the bottom. So in this chart here, what we're showing is that longer spans means fewer roof penetrations. So we've done a bit of a comparison versus the leading competitor. And of course, this is going to vary by location, and it takes into account primarily wind loading in this case is what we're worried about when it comes to roof anchors like the Talon. But not every anchor is designed the same. They don't all have the same capacity, and they can't resist the same uplift loads. So having high loads means we don't need them as often. So if we can install a Talon every 4 feet, it is very common for some competing products to be half that. They can be every 2 feet. And as we can see here in Victoria, Lethbridge, Halifax, Ottawa, and Regina, there can be quite a difference. So really what we're seeing here is that they're on average about 1.8 times more attachments in these locations, sometimes higher. So one, it means more anchors, like 80% more anchors when you're in that. So more time to install, more product that you have to purchase for your job. And on top of that, every anchor's got a set of screws. So it results in, even for some of these anchors that may have fewer screws than R6, if you have double the attachments, you are going to end up with ultimately more penetrations in your roof. So by having this high load capacity and good rail spans, we're able to minimize the number of holes that you put in your roof. It's not only faster, but it's less likely to leak or cause issues in the future. So we have a couple of options for how you can mount the Talon XE. The standard is the deck mount or the rafterless mount. So this is going to use 6 of those number 10 screws. They're in a circular pattern. They're going to use the round holes on the base plate. And they screw right into your plywood, your OSB, whatever your decking is. So the beauty of this is you're not hunting for trusses. You can just line these up, space them out according to your spans, and away you go. So it really makes it quick and easy. It takes a lot of time to locate trusses and to do all that planning on the roof. So rafterless attachment where you can is, always going to be your fastest option for sure. But we realize there's going to be times where you may, maybe the decking is not in good condition or it's really thin and it can't handle the right capacity. Or maybe you just want to go into a truss, to get a better connection. There's plenty of good reasons to do that. So we accommodate for this as well. There are 2 holes kind of centered on the base plate. They're identified a little bit differently. They're more of a square cutout hole so that you can really easily tell which one is the right hole to use. And we would use 2 structural screws. And these are a number 10 by 3 1/8 inch screw. So they're a little longer, the kind of 3-inch screws. So that's designed to get all the way through your decking and into the truss. And the 2 structural screws gives you really good bite. And what's really critical here or important is that they're still a number 10 screw. So they're small diameter. There's no pre-drilling required. And they're, again, really unlikely to kind of split or crack your truss because, again, measuring out trusses is time consuming and difficult. And to perfectly center that screw on a truss, from the top is difficult to do. So the smaller that screw, the more likely you are to stay kind of within the meat of the truss and have a good solid connection. So a little more detail on the truss mounting. So this is kind of what it looks like from a side view. And you can see those 2 square holes that we're going to use for this installation. So we would use 2 screws, one on the top, one on the bottom. And again, no pre-drilling is required. And what's great are these are standard screws. In fact, both screws, the decking and the truss mount screws, we supply these through Fast Track. So, you can get these through us. That's what I would recommend. But these can also just be purchased from most major hardware stores. So if you're in a pinch or you need to get these quickly, these are not a proprietary screw you're going to have to hunt for, or you're going to be stuck without a solution. You can just run down to the store and purchase these screws to keep your job moving. Of course, when you do these, you want that screw as centered on the truss as possible. You don't want screws that are going off to the side and can split or maybe not engage properly. You want a good solid connection. Another nice detail about the base plate, you can see it on a few of the images, but we've got some text kind of etched into the base plate. One is the part number, but the important one maybe is on the top. It says ridge with a little arrow. And the key detail here is the ridge is pointing up, and that means we're going to position the base plate facing, with the ridge pointing towards the ridge of your roof. And what that's going to do is keep it nice and square, of course, and it's going to align those 2 truss mounting holes properly so that they're both in the correct direction to screw into a truss. Water seal. So this is really important, and it really is one of the key features of the Talon XC, dual protection. So unlike many competitors, we use 2 forms of water seal. The first being a butyl sealing technology. So again, the entire bottom surface of this base plate has a piece of butyl on it. So that's going to stick down to the roof. It's going to adhere really well. It's very sticky. It's going to go right onto your shingle. And what's really great about this too is as you drive these 6 screws in, or the 2 if you're doing a truss mount, the screws are going to go through the butyl. And as they screw through the butyl, they kind of pull the butyl down into the threads and they seal those holes as they go. So not only is it sealing the base plate, but it's threading into those screws and it's really helping to keep those connections watertight. And then the second, of course, is the flashing. We truly believe that the most watertight, most long-lasting, durable solution is, a flashed solution. So the flashing is going to tuck underneath and it's going to keep all water away from your connections, period. So everything underneath there should stay dry. And, for long-term durability, you're not getting the sun on the butyl, you're not getting water kind of sitting there and like long-term risk for leaks. So to us, having the dual protection really sets this product apart from pretty much anything else in the market. So for the flashing installation, this is really important. So you can see in the image here, the base plate's going to install within a course of shingles, and then the flashing is going to install over top. And as you put the flashing in, it's going to tuck underneath the first course of shingles, and then you'll see it'll actually extend underneath the second course of shingles. And that's important because if you're not perfectly aligned, like if you kind of hit one of those vertical seams in between the shingles, you want it to be under the second course so that no water is going to find a way in there. And it doesn't need to be far. I think it's only about a ½ an inch underneath that second course is what we need. So we try and keep that minimal so that you're not going to hit nails and run into issues with the installation. But it's really important that that tucks all the way up and under, and that keeps all the water out and your attachments dry. So again, robust design. So this is designed in Canada for Canada. So we consider, all Canadian locations when we're doing these designs. We want them to be compatible with, pretty much anywhere. And it certainly is. I guess more so, we want the 4-foot span to be compatible in the broad, range of locations. Where needed, of course, you can look at our span tables and you may have to shorten those spans, but we want to keep that 4-foot span kind of as the default for most Canadian locations. So having that high pullout capacity is really critical for that. And what's really allowing us to do this is this rigid steel plate design. So we've made some improvements in the shape of this plate, and as Stanko said, we've actually improved capacity even with less screws, and that largely comes out of the stiffness we've achieved from this steel plate. It's very rigid, very solid, and it distributes the load really well across all 6 screws. It is engineered in Canada. We've got engineers on staff. We do all that design, testing. So it is building code 2020 compliant. We meet all those standards. And, outside of just doing the engineering and code compliance, this has all been tested and load tested so that we know exactly what we're dealing with and what the screws can handle. So what we've got here is a product comparison. So this is kind of comparing the Fast Track Talon XE versus, I guess, 4 of the competing products in the market. But I want to highlight kind of the key points here and what makes the Talon XE special. So water protection. So butyl and mechanical flashing. Versus the top competitors, we're the only one with a redundant water seal. Some use a flashing, some use a butyl, but nobody's using both. And really, this is the best way to keep, it really is an insurance policy on your system. We understand that flashing may take a little bit of extra time versus purely a butyl installation, but it is the best water protection possible, and we believe in it. For strength, again, 4-foot spans is typical. For many products, it requires more, often in the neighborhood of 2 times the attachments. So, consider that when you're looking at the speed and time and number of penetrations in the roof. If you need to use more attachments, it has a major impact on your installation and the cost of the project. It's really important too to check span charts, right? Like I think it's a bit of a misconception that 4-foot spans are standard everywhere. It's very much not the case. With our product, we push to have 4-foot spans in the widest range possible. But even with our product, with really robust pull-out strength, there are going to be locations where you might have to do 3 or 2-foot spans. Most of these products, if not all, have got their own version of span charts and capacity ratings. So it's really important not to just assume that 4-foot is going to work for your location. You need to check those charts, go through, and be confident that you're installing, to their specifications. The hardware, so again, generic and locally available. So many of these are using proprietary screws. They have limited availability. So if you run out, you're going to have to order them directly from that supplier. You can't just run to the store and get them. They're specialty screws. So, it's really important, right? We realize that you're going to be out on a job, you're going to run out, things happen. So it makes it much more accessible if you can just hop down to the store and grab them. And of course, both the screws, the decking and the truss install screws, we will supply. So, we recommend doing that, but making them generic and locally available. And the tools involved to install them are just standard, right? You don't need to tool up with anything fancy. These are just going to be the regular drill bits you have in your standard toolkit. Adjustability. So again, the small base footprint, it allows flexibility. Some attachments are larger than others. They don't all have as much wiggle room. So again, that's something that we're happy to introduce with this new evolution of the Talon. Truss damage, again, this is a big one that not everybody's doing. Many of the truss installations are still using larger leg screws, like a 5/16 or 7/32, and they're big, right? They have a much higher likelihood of damaging the truss underneath. They also often need pre-drilling, right? So now you're not just screwing in a screw, you have to go in and pre-drill and make sure that you're centered on the truss perfectly. So using the small number 10 screws kind of de-risks this attachment, and it makes it faster. You're not going through that extra step of having to pre-drill holes. And then longevity. Again, we want this to last the lifetime of your system. We have a 25-year warranty for a reason. This product is designed to last the lifetime of your system. You've got modules and racking that can do this, so the attachment should last that long too. And really the key to that is it keeps everything dry, right? You're not going to have to go back and do any kind of maintenance on this attachment. You don't need to apply any additional sealants or do any checks. You're going to install it, and with the flashing and the butyl, you've got a lifetime system that you never have to worry about for leaks. And then, of course, as you might be familiar, we've got online calculators at fastrack.ca. So within here, we've got our FastTrack Ultra calculator. And I don't think this is live quite yet, but it's going to be very soon. So right now, you're going to have some options, right? You're going to go in and you can select your roof type. So maybe it's important to bring up. So the Talon XE is for asphalt shingles only. So it's not to be installed on steel roofing. It needs to have it needs to be a shingle roof so that you can use the flashing and tuck it up underneath the shingles. So when you go into the calculator, you're going to get that option. You have your roof type, so you can pick steel, and it'll run you through the various steel roof attachments we have available. But if you select asphalt shingle, the Talon is going to come up as the default, and very soon that'll be the Talon XE as the default. So you can select that. And then within our tool, we've got a bunch of other great stuff that's going to help you optimize your system. So again, this is designed to be used with our FastTrack Ultra. So it'll mount to our L-foot and our rail system. So as you go through the steps of this calculator, you're going to get the options to go through and configure your system and set it up and get all the parts that you want. And as an output of this, you'll get a bill of materials. You can download it, whether PDF or Excel, and that'll have the number of attachments into it. So that's important too. That'll help you to budget for your project and plan your installation. And then FastTrack, we're part of Charge Solar, so when you order from us, you get the full Charge Solar Advantage. And really what that means is nationwide inventory. So we're going to have inventory of the Talon XE across Canada. We have warehouses, everywhere from Victoria, Barrie, Halifax. So we've got you covered for your install. You can get this fast response times. It's a product we're going to have in stock. So again, it's readily available and extensively stocked. So it's available when you need it. Technical support. So we have in-house licensed engineering services. We have several mechanical engineers on staff. So we can help you with your designs. We can help you confirm capacities, point you in the right direction. We can also do full plans and layouts for you on a range of projects, slope proofs for sure. So if you need any support or engineering or advice, we're here. We're just a phone call or an email away. And then, of course, our product portfolio. So at Charge, we have everything you need, right? It's not just racking. We've got all the equipment, the modules, the inverters, the whole shebang. So it's really a one-stop shop. You're going to go to Charge. You can get all your product. You can get all your engineering, your technical support. And of course, we have inventory everywhere. So it really makes it an easy, seamless experience. That brings me to the end here. So maybe I'll pause, and if there's any questions, I'll open it up and we can kind of go back through and address them.
Got one question in our queue here from Peter Reiger. With architectural shingles, sometimes you have to install a Talon on a course of shingles with a vertical lip and a different level. Any concern on that with the butyl sealant being compressed on a slight angle? I'm sure I could visualize that, but
Yeah, I know what you mean. So the architectural shingles are kind of funny. So they're not, each course is not flat. You kind of get ups and downs, I guess, horizontally on the roof. Like I would certainly avoid it if at all possible. With the rafterless attachment, like usually you've got wiggle room to move these left or right, and it's not going to be a problem. So I would try to avoid it. It will be covered with a flashing. So if you really had to do it, I don't think it's a big issue because it's going to be covered and sealed. But there is a bit more risk there that the butyl might not seal as cleanly against it. So really my recommendation would be try and keep it on the flats wherever possible. And we've tried to make it again, like with the smaller footprint, you're gonna have a little bit more space to navigate that and make it fit. So hopefully you find that a little friendlier and easier to find the right location to install it.
Couple more questions, or one more from Michael again. ETA for those to be in stock in BC. What are the cost differences between the existing Talon flashing? I guess I can answer that. We're looking to have stock in September, be able to ship in September. These are going to land, I think, in one of our warehouses, and it's going to take us time to kind of distribute them to all our locations. In terms of cost, I believe we don't have our sales team on the call, so I'm hesitant to talk about how we're going to price these, but it should be pretty similar to the current Talon pricing. Any other questions? That's it, Tatum.
Yeah, no more questions coming in.
Right.
Maybe we'll give it a couple more seconds here. But Connor, great presentation. Thank you so much. And Stanko, thank you for answering all the monitoring the questions there. Um, as I mentioned earlier, this webinar will be shared with everyone within a couple days. And yeah, I still don't see any questions come through. You answered them all, Connor. Great
It's great.
presentation.
It's a success. I'll take it.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to marketing@chargesolar.com or your account manager, and we can get those questions
Oh,
answered for you. Oh,
Mike K says I do. So maybe we'll give him a moment to vibration and wind vibration.
do you want to
Like,
elaborate, Mike?
is that a concern?
So yeah, maybe we can talk about. I think in terms of resistance to vibration, like we use, serrated flange bolts. So they're kind of once they're on, it's pretty hard to get them on, get them to vibrate loose. I think we're talking about wind buffeting a little bit rather than like a mechanical vibration. That's for reciprocating engine or something like that. So I don't think we have a lot of concerns there. Again, that hasn't changed from the historical product, and we've been installing this for the better part of the last decade and a half, and we haven't had issues with hardware failing due to vibration.
Yeah, and it's worth noting like that L-foot connection to the base plate. So that's it's really bolting down the aluminum L-foot kind of through into the steel base plate. So that's a torqued connection. Like you can torque that right down to 10 foot-pounds, and it's going to be really solid. And as Denko says, it's serrated fasteners, so they've got that anti-vibration kind of feature built into the nut. So yeah, they don't really come loose, and then the deck screws, of course, are they're solid. They're not going to come loose, and the butyl itself, you'd be surprised how sticky that is, and well, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I think we kind of at one point just tested we installed the Talon with screws, compressed the butyl, took the screws out, and then tested it with just butyl, and you'd be surprised how much capacity just the butyl itself has. acknowledge that some other systems may have this problem, but again, we use the serrated flange nuts that kind of the bite once you screw them down and provide resistance from loosening. A couple more questions. One from Raz. Raz wants to know if he can exchange his talons for XCs. I would suggest you contact your account manager about that and have a discussion with them, whether or not that's something we can do for you. Another question from Peter. 10 foot-pounds on the flange to the flashing? Yes, all our torques are respected 10 foot-pounds.
Yeah, we use the same kind of M8 fastener throughout pretty much everything in the Fast Rack Ultra system. So, and this is no exception. So it'll tie right in. So it kind of carries out that single tool install when you're doing Fast Rack Ultra, and they're all going to have that same 10 foot-pounds torque.
All right.
That's all we have for now.
That's all we have.
Maybe
give it another couple.
Just give it another couple minutes to see if anything percolates to the top of people's minds. Oh, there's another one. Also 10 foot-pounds from the Alpha to the Ultra Rack.
Yeah.
Yep, all M8 hardware is spec to 10 foot-pounds, and Ultra only uses M8 hardware. So everything in the Ultra system will be M8, and everything will be 10 foot-pounds. Same 30mm socket, same everything. One more for Francis and Lynn Harris. Does the black cover over the Talon XE have any sealant under it, or is that up to the installer?
No sealant. So yeah, so the base plate, of course, has got the butyl that'll seal against the roof, and then the flashing, no sealant required. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not designed for it. It's an extra step, and it's really unnecessary. It isn't. I would say that one, it's an extra step that you just don't want to do, and two, it hasn't been tested or checked against that. I'd almost be more concerned that you might trap water or moisture on the inside. So I would recommend don't, and that's why we've got the 2-layer water seal. So between the butyl and the flashing, it's going to keep everything out of there, and that makes the install faster and easier too, right? One less step on the roof. So that's kind of part of the design, is to eliminate the need for any sealants. Sealants are great, and they obviously work in all kinds of applications, but they don't last forever either, right? So we don't really want to rely on a sealant within our systems. We want that to be separate.
Yeah, it's a great point. A lot of the other products use wet sealants, and as Connor said, wet sealant isn't going to last 25 years. So you're going to find yourself up on the roof at some point, or a few times before your system comes down, reapplying sealant. One thing I would say, if you find yourself working with a really low slope roof, like a 112 or a 212, which case you kind of run a risk as the snow melts that it ices and creates pools, in which case I would consider perhaps applying some sealant to the flashing when you install it. But other than that, like as Connor said, I wouldn't bother with it. Question from Michael. Same 10 feet for the mid-end clamps as well as the optimizer hold down kits. Yep. Always 10 foot-pounds. Another one from Mike K. Can it be used with any rail system like Unirac or Kinetic, or is it specific?
I guess it would depend. Like I would say yes. It may depend a little bit on that system. If you're going to use it with a different racking system, I think you'd want to use their L-foot. Our L-foot is designed for our Ultra rail, kind of those corrugated teeth are designed to mesh. So, but provided they have an L-foot with an equivalent, mounting hole, I don't really see a reason why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. As long as your hardware is similar and can accommodate the stud in a Talon, feel free. Try not to. We prefer you use our product, but if you must, you can. Question from Michael. With this new flashing, you are no longer required to use roof mastic in a U shape under the flashing or the row on top to reseal the shingle above back down.
No, again, no requirement. You may want to keep like some roofing sealant handy, but you don't need it for the flashing install. Really, the only time you might use it is if you were to damage the shingles at all. Like some shingles are, friendlier to lift than others, especially on older roofs. They can get a little stuck, or if they're really cold, they might be kind of stiff. So if you find yourself in a situation where you've damaged the shingle a little bit or something along those lines, then yeah, by all means, be prepared to maybe do a little patch. But a standard installation, no requirement.
I'm glad we didn't close this call when we wanted to about 10 minutes ago because we got some great questions.
Yeah, we'll keep it open for another few seconds for any other questions to come in. All right. Well, if you think of any other questions after we do, say goodbye on this call, please reach out to your account manager. They'll be happy to answer. Oh, it looks like we do have one more that came through.
Comment from Michael. Excellent changes. A really nice improvement across the board. Thank you for the comment. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Connor.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, thank you. And a lot of this, to be clear, is driven by clients like yourselves, right? That's where we're getting this feedback, and we appreciate your feedback and your installer experience, right? Is these little things that are small, rounded corners or a slightly smaller profile, that they make the difference. So we've really tried to wrap in a whole bunch of these subtle improvements, and we're really excited about this product. So we hope you are too.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Yeah. If we don't have any more questions, we'll leave it there. Thank you again, Connor and Stanko.
All right, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're
Take care,
welcome.
everyone. Bye.